that we're having already is the equipment.
Okay, so, and what I'm having to say, I'm going to try and project as well. But the audio is going to go on the recording. And it's going to go out on the feed. Let me take care of another housekeeping thing. If anyone, well, no one needs masks, but they are back there. That's one thing. I already covered the fact that the coordinator of the Milwaukie Poetry Series, and I want to welcome you to our reading tonight. This is our 16th season. We're very excited to have Zachary Schomburg as our poet tonight, and I'm going to introduce him in just a few minutes. I also want to welcome all of you who are on YouTube and who are seeing this on live stream. So thank you for logging in. That's great. We're glad that we have this kind of technology that enables us to do this. So I look out and I see people here, and we've just been in the COVID situation where we weren't doing in-person events. So we're getting back to doing them. Thank you for being here in the seats, and thank you for those of you who have logged on. I want to say that there are so many things that can take your time. We have a lot of choices in life. And so thank you for being here and spending an evening with us and with Zachary. I do want to make some other thanks. Thanks to the city of Milwaukie who have supported the poetry series from the beginning. Thanks to the Learning Library for their support. I want you to meet Tara Go, who is here from the, yes, let's give her a hand. Tara does a lot, and she's our liaison from the library, so thank you for everything that you are doing. And for those of you who have just been here for the first time, and remember the old library and the pond house, which is where Zachary and John, when you both read earlier, you both read there. You were in the pond house, which, yeah, that's what I thought. So, if you remember the pond house, we are now in this beautiful new building that fits on the footprint that we have here. So it's just great. Thanks to the library. Thanks also to the Milwaukie Poetry Series Committee. We have a committee, and as you know, you don't have things happen unless you have a group of people working on them. And thanks also to Willamette Falls Media. So I want to thank Josh Reynolds over here. Josh is our technician. Yeah, let's give Josh a hand. Josh is a magician, and Josh does all of the things that need to be done from the Willamette Falls Media, and really getting us on the air and recording. I want to let people know that we did get a grant, and this project is supported in part by a grant from the Clackamas County Cultural Coalition, managed by the Clackamas Arts Alliance and made possible by funding from the Oregon Cultural Trust. So we thank the Cultural Trust very much, and to the Clackamas County Arts Alliance. We do have a broadside of one of Zachary's poems. If you don't have one of these, I think everybody does. If you find that there is someone that you would like to give the poem to, we have enough copies for you to take one with you and do that. The other thing that I want to mention is that pertaining to the grant, we do have a survey. And Kristen Roeder back here has been asking people to complete our survey. So if you would do that, that's a big help to us. And it doesn't take too long to fill out. So you could think about doing that and helping us. Announcements before I introduce Zachary. We have with us tonight, let's welcome Bob Sterry, who is the chair of the Clackamas County Literary Arts Committee for the Clackamas County Arts Alliance. And Clackamas County is having a writing contest, and Bob's going to tell us about that.
Thank you very much, Tom, for letting me do this. But first I'd like to ask for a round of applause for Tom Hogan for managing this amazing series of 16 seasons. When you look around and you see this number of things that have been started 16 years or seasons ago and failed, you can then reflect on what a wonderful thing Tom has done for poetry in Milwaukie and probably a little bit further out too. As Tom said, in a moment of panic, I became the chairman of the Literary Arts Committee of the Clackamas County Arts Alliance. Yeah, it's a mouthful. And we started that committee because the Arts Alliance wanted to reach out in a more positive way to creative people in the county. And I don't know if you know this, but the county is huge, Clackamas. It has 340 or 350,000 people in it. And some of those people must be writers and poets and playwrights. And I'm sure there are hundreds of them. So when we started that committee, one of the first things we asked was, well, what are we going to do? How do we reach out to creative people in the county? So Muggins here said, well, why don't we run a writing contest? And everybody piled in and said, great idea, Bob. Why don't you run it? Yeah. So we started talking about it last fall. And now it's actually up and running, and we have people entering it. But I'd just like to ask you if you have any interest in $250, which is the prize for the winner of one of the 4 genres in the writing contest. You should enter. And I'm going to leave this, or several of these, up there on the credenza, and some of these lovely bookmarks, which you're welcome to take as well. The 4 genres are short story, essay, poetry, and play. There are limits, of course, to the number of lines or the number of words in those genres. And of course, I don't know, you're all poets probably, but you may also be writing other forms too. So I invite you to join our contest. And if there are any questions, I'm going to be here all evening, and please do not hesitate to ask me. Thank you, Tom, and thank you.
And thank you, Bob, for everything you've done. And when that call came, why don't you do it? Yeah. I think we've all heard that call. Why don't you do it? Great idea. You stepped up and did it. So thank you. A couple of other things to take care of. Yes, we are wearing masks tonight. And the poet and the series have asked people to wear masks for this reading. So thank you, everybody, for understanding that. I want to remind everybody about your telephonic devices. So if you would silence them, pagers, beepers, whatever you have. So that would be great. And how we're going to proceed is Zachary is going to read, and then we have a question and answer period after that for a bit of time. We'll see how long the questions are. And then Zachary has a poem. So we'd like to finish with a poem and have the poet come back and do an ending poem to end the event. So if we could do that tonight, that's really how we're going to proceed. I've been looking forward to this. I mentioned earlier that Zachary was here and read once before, so we're happy to have him back again. He's the author of 6 books of poems, including most recently Fjords, Volume 2, Black Ocean, 2021, and a novel, my mother, Featherproof Books, 2017. He is also the publisher of an independent poetry press, Octopus Books, and a painter. He lives in Portland. You can learn more about him at his website, and I'll say it, ZacharySchomburg.net. But you could also Google that and get some more information about Zachary. Could you join me in welcoming our poet this evening, Zachary Schomburg? Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Remembering a poem. I'm remembering a poem. I'll describe it to you. It starts with remembering a poem. Then I describe it. That's all I want, really. And that's all I've ever wanted. To have done what I would once have done. I wanted to get that poem out of the way before I forgot. And thanks, Tom made a wonderful broadside of that poem. That's one of the newer poems I've written. It's a beautiful little broadside with a color that also makes it kind of hard to forget where you've placed the poem. That poem was written in a similar way to Fjords Volume 2, which is many of them were written kind of while lucid dreaming, while maybe some of us do this before we wake up, kind of compose poems in our head, and they're the most beautiful, perfect things. They're like, I wrote that. I have no idea how much time it took because I'm kind of sleeping, but I wrote that, and then I think, oh, I have to remember, because I'm not writing anything down, I have to remember that a perfect poem that I've written. And I guess that morning I was trying to remember it so hard that that's what the poem was about. But and usually when I do remember it and then write it down at like noon or something after the day's already started, it's not as perfect anymore. I'm like, oh, what was I thinking? That poem was lame. So I'm going to read mostly, or maybe part of the time, from Fjords Volume 2, which is the most recent book. And then because I've never really given too much love to my book before this one called Pulver Mar, I just haven't really read from it much. I'm going to read from that, take the opportunity to read from that, especially this. One of the lovely things about this series is that poets actually get some time to kind of read a little bit more than just their last few poems. So, and I really appreciate that. It's kind of that feeling like we've all had probably when you're 5 or 6 or 7 and your parents have friends over and you've like written a play or a joke or a play, or I've already said play, or a poem. And then they say, we're going to indulge you, come on out and perform for the, and you know, that's what I feel like all this attention for 40 minutes or so will feel a little bit like that. So thank you for indulging my poems I've written. Fjords Volume 2 is actually, you'll be surprised, but it's the second volume in a series that I'm writing that's going to be 5 volumes throughout my entire life, hopefully. And this is the second, and they each will start with what would kill me. What would kill me? On page 63 of my copy of Woman in the Dunes by Kobo Abe, someone had underlined a monotonous existence enclosed in an eye. How much sand there is depends on how far away you are from the sand, I thought. A spot, the whole sky. A week later, while watching Teshigahara's 1964 film, I paused it at 1 hour, 40 minutes, and 58 seconds when I got up to get another cold drink. It was a hot night. There were no screens on my windows. Right there in front of me, 3 men stood still on a sand dune with flashlights in the dark. Together they looked like the bright, unblinking eyes of a jumping spider. I cannot stop, I thought, the spider, or a pursuit, or from tiring in quicksand, or a madness in the darkness, or a tiny light pink fruit fly, the hot breath of a bear, and always on television, from finding a pair of scissors on the moon, or when I die, noticing my death notice me. Oh, thanks. Thank you. This is the life. We were folding our clothes in the laundry room when Rita looked out the window. This is the life, she said. Yeah, it sure is, I said, with a little laugh. Yeah, this is the life, she said again. A pair of pants hung still in her hands. Do you see something moving in the bush? I only wanted her to snap back. We had a lot of clothes left to fold. Rita, is everything okay? The life, she said, looking squarely at the bush. I looked more closely at it too. It was, in fact, moving. Not moving in the wind, but moving away, sliding slowly toward the trees on the other side of the lawn. All afternoon we watched it go, past the trees, a speck in the setting sun. Then the trees too started to move and move slowly away into the sun. Then our one-car garage, and the neighbor's garage, and then the neighbor's house. We didn't even know them. We wanted to introduce ourselves, but we never got around to it. There was nothing left on our lawn but long shadows and no way of knowing what made them. We used to drape it in electric bulbs, Rita said, returning to the folding. But that was a different life. That is so sweet of you, but you'll tire yourself out. But I can feel the clapping if you don't clap. Thank you, though. This one is called Flushing, Michigan. We eat a hot dog on the bow of a cruise ship. It was where Flushing, Michigan once was. One long, long, flat wave. I think of a noise inside of another noise, the water on the sea. What did I do to deserve this, you say? The hot dog is so beautiful, you get choked up. Maybe just lick it, I say. Who among us can put our body in the light and not light up? Your pain is not enough. My dad and I were playing softball in the park when a family wearing long black robes showed up. They stood on the first baseline. Hey, can we play ball? They said. Their voice sounded like an old organ. Sorry, I said. It's just me and my dad. It's okay, they said. We get it. My dad lobbed the ball to me from the mound. I could tell he wanted to just keep things moving. The family in long black robes felt heavy, even at that distance, like 1,000 tons of sorrow. Their sorrow dimmed the sun. My dad's pitch was perfect, right down the middle, but I just didn't have the heart to swing at it. Why didn't you swing? Said the family. It was right down the middle. They were right. I had no excuses. I lost a light, all feeling, maybe forever. How else to say this? Dad, I had no blood. I had no blood. My blood bled, but I did not bleed blood. A lot of these are, like I said, from dreams. Some of them are, that one was from a dream by my friend Brandon. Like, it's so rare that you get to talk about your dreams to other people and have them actually listen or care. Usually you just kind of spring them upon them and you notice their eyes kind of start to wander, unless they're involved in the dream. But one gift that I gave to some of my friends is saying, okay, I'm an audience. Tell me about your most vivid dream that you've had recently. And it's kind of exciting to get to share that. So I took in a lot of friends' dreams, a lot of times by email, and just used those kind of as some molding clay for poems. I usually took a ton of liberties and changed things around, but it's so much easier for me to write from something than from a blank page. This one happens to be one of my dreams. Give a kite, take a kite. This is after I started a new job. I started a give a kite, take a kite program at work. Everyone was stressed about the big project, so it was the least I could do. I thought about all the different box kites dancing against the sky over the treetops, but no one ever used it. It was just a waste paper basket in the corner. One day, I saw a frog in it. True story. This is another true story. This one's called Glass to Glass. My friend had an imaginary friend named Urker, and when I brought it up to him, he had no memory of it. I told my mom about Urker and how my friend didn't remember, but my mom didn't remember my friend. Are you speaking of your imaginary friend, Glass to Glass? She said. But I had no memory of Glass to Glass. He was a bear, she said. True story. Another friend of mine sent me a picture of kelp on a beach that looked like a toupee. It looked like a haircut. Haircuts of icebergs. A long time ago, the icebergs all had haircuts. They bopped around the young sea, each with a different haircut, big poofy ones parted in the middle. Nice hair is how icebergs would greet each other every few thousand years when they'd near. Once they all melted, the sea was never the same, and their haircuts all washed up on the beaches like perfect gifts for the tops of heads of people. But it turned out we were much too small. All right, some of these are pretty weird. This one is called Bien Fang. Do you guys remember those folders? Bien Fang folders? Or like Trapper Keepers or folders or like stationery? I just loved those two words. Like, I love that name. So this is called Bien Fang, which has nothing to do with folders. In my backyard, while watering the row of peonies, I found a family in a house I had never noticed before. Hey, have you been here this whole time? I said. We have, said the woman. Where do you come from? Where do you come from? She said. I live right there, I said, pointing to my house. Oh, have you been there the whole time? She said. Yes. I said. We talked for a few hours like that, pointing at things and asking if we've seen those things before. She picked some flowers from a yard and handed them to me. I will miss you when you go, she said, handing me the flowers. I walked home just a few feet away, and I dried them out between 2 sheets of plastic in the microwave. And then I put them between 2 plates of glass. I tried to look up the name of the flowers, but they weren't in any of my flower books. How strange to go for so long in the world without a name, I thought. They looked like they had little French fangs, like a French mouth with a couple of good fangs. That's how Bien Fang came into my life. All right, I'll read one more from this book. This one is called The Life of Someone. We were all told that someone would be born on a certain day, and when that day came, almost everyone, not all, but most, were awaiting her arrival, and were quite pleased when it turned out to, in fact, be her. When she died, about 100 years later, we were all gone, of course. No one was left to go to her funeral. The world was much quieter then. There were 2 grebes in a tree, and 1 even in the sea. That one, I had this moment when writing that poem when it occurred to me, not occurred to me, but like when I had this sort of profound just thing that I guess I noticed about at a funeral, is that when we're born around these people who we love and who love us, and they're all older than us. And then if you live a long life, when you die, it's a whole set of other people that weren't there when you were born. You love them too. But it's like they're different people. Okay. So I'm going to read from Pulver Mar. And Pulver Mar is an interesting book. I've always wanted to, maybe in my lifetime, just was feeling I really love like old books where you'd have your name and then it would be like poems from these years, and we never do that anymore. It's like, I want to figure out how to do that. So I want to see my name on a book with like poems from these particular years. And so what this is just a series of chapbooks. So it's 8 different chapbooks that I wrote in 4 years and then collected them as a single book. So together they don't really add up to what feels like a book. So this feels more like a collection to me. The very first section is a little chapbook of basically children's poems, but not really. not that you would read them to children, but somehow I want them to feel like they're for children. I really get so inspired by the simplicity and the simple language of children's books. Just that, subject, verb, object, like simple words, single syllable words. So I get inspired by that. This one is called Pulver Mar. There once was a mar named Pulver Mar. Pulver Mar loved being a mar. It loved its rim and its footpath, and it loved its radiomagmatic eruptions and its bathing place. But what it loved most of all was its dove. Like all doves, its dove was a dove of love. The dove dove down deep. It dove down deep into the mar's love, where it is warm and where it is made. The cloud. The cloud fell in love with the woman, and the woman fell in love with the cloud. The cloud sat on the woman's head like a big white hairdo. The cloud was the biggest and whitest hairdo anyone had ever seen. Together they shined bright, an afternoon of true magic. Some clouds spent their moment casting shadows, but not my cloud, said the woman years later, shivering now, uncontrollably now, in a snowdrift on the white plains. Yeah, I wouldn't read that to a kid, but this one is called Peach Who Thinks. There once was a girl named Peach who loved to think. She stayed in her room all day thinking about everything outside of the room. A skein of black geese, the way a telephone feels in the hand, life on the moon. Peach's family would linger at the dinner table each night to talk, but she would always excuse herself to go off thinking. There are not enough minutes in a life, she thought, and then she thought about that too, about all the minutes she had left. Time surrounded her, mockingly, like a field in a field. This one is called Luis and the Box Kite. Luis's father died, so Luis built a box kite to keep himself company. When Luis flew the box kite, he lost his grip on the string. He was very upset at himself, for he had no more wood and no more string to build another box kite. The box kite just drifted over the mountains, its string either waving goodbye or reaching blindly for a hand. I love you, Luis said. There's a high box kite percentage in today's reading. Just noticing that. I'll read a few. I just kind of started turning and I was like, oh, I'd like some of these. This one is called More About Gravity. We're in a different section now. I remember this one planet, how it had these two people kissing on the lip of a big volcano. I used to watch them every night in the fuzzy lens of my telescope. Each time they'd get too excited and tip in. Come home, I said alone in my room to no one, and no one ever did. John, you got this on your wall. This one's called A Novel About a House. I really love writing novels, but they're really hard to do. I don't know if you guys have written one or tried to write one, but they're a lot harder than writing poems. So I thought, I have a hack. I will write poems about writing novels, and then I can just get that idea out, and it'll take 5 minutes tops, and not 5 years. A novel about a house. I'm writing a novel about a house that has a dream of being a stand-up comedian. It takes a bus to LA, but everyone gets upset. The house takes up a whole row of seats. No one believes that the house will make it. There's nothing funny about it. It's a ranch. A novel about a secret lake. Oh, here's another novel one. I'm writing a novel about a secret lake that everyone knows about, except for one person. A bitter older man named David, who collects swords. Everyone gives their word they won't tell David about the secret lake. Things go well like that for a few years. A few near accidental revelations and casual conversations, but no major slip-ups. Then David dies in a suspicious, you guessed it, sword accident. Everyone walks around shaking their heads, visibly upset, but not about David. The lake, one of them says at the end. It'll never be the same. All right, here's another, building another small little theme. This one's called Congrats on Your New Job. Your new job is to sit behind a desk and click the metal clicker every time a new person walks in. In your excitement, you click the clicker on accident. But it's okay, you think. You just tell yourself to not click the clicker when the next person walks in. But no one else walks in. Hours go by. You think maybe somebody is about to come in, so you click, forgetting that you weren't supposed to click for the next person. Now you're 2 clicks ahead. It's the end of the day. You go home, but you never go back. It's just not the job for you. You spend the rest of your life like that, 2 clicks ahead, like a fly pinned to the meridian. All right, I'll read 2 things. Actually, my friend John is here, and he said, hey, do you have that Hear Oars chapbook? I want to read that. And I was like, no, but if you come to the reading tomorrow night, I'll just read you some of it. So as I was looking so Hear Oars is anybody here subscribe to Matthias Savalina's Dream Delivery Service by chance? Look that up. That's a fun one. He's one of my very best friends, and he has a dream delivery service. And I won't take time to describe what that is, but you can look that up if you're interested. But what I use it for is I get his dreams daily. They come in little pink envelopes that he writes for me, and then for anybody who subscribes. And I use them, like we were talking about before, as prompts, as ways to get started on a poem. For this, I would take some of his sentences and then think, without reading what the next sentence was, I would write a response to that sentence, and then just get rid of his stuff and use my responses as a poem. So they're all single-lined, in-stopped poems that all have periods at the end of every line. So they add up like sentences, short little sentences. And then there's 50 of them, so I'm not going to read them all. But when I was thinking about which to read, I was looking in the table of contents, and there's 50 listed here, but they're all listed by their first lines because they don't have titles. And for the first time today, I was reading them, and I was like, that works too. So I'm going to just read all the first lines of these poems. If any of those first lines of the poems that I'm reading stand out to you, and you say, I would love to hear the rest of that poem, when I'm done, I'll say, all right, which ones do you want to hear? And I'll read those out. That'll be the game. So you have to just remember one line. Okay, so this is the table of contents for a section called Hear Oars. First lines of poems. Where are all our oars? People are all made of glass. There's my uncle. I don't know where I am. Being a non-tiger's not a good excuse. I have no chance to become mayor. A person gets angrier as she gets closer. The maze is shaped like an 8. None of the lights are on. Some people die standing up. I peek before the prayer's over. I go numb so nothing hurts me. A garden will save me money. The children get burns on their legs. A tiger popped up. I was waiting backstage at The Tonight Show. I finally found my plans. It is now known as the missing pig. I only drive a Toyota Corona. Her knees swell up like two cantaloupes. It's not just any river. I've never felt so in shape. It feels good outside of the burning car. I haven't talked to my sisters in years. It sounded like you said, attaching a self to a wall. I'm on a new highway. I look all over for my friend. I named the boat George Washington. It's like rising joy was lit from its own flame. Pasta is my favorite food. I rub the ball and say, it's a boy. It's like a sea of heat. I'm a buffalo, which is great. I look at the mountains for crying. There are like 5 fuss shops in the area. I work so hard, but for what? No one knows what BOGO means. I'll only drive a Toyota Corona. I'm on an island or back in time. I read a book on sex to you on a dune. I'd never heard of Kentucky. Never take a class on how to fly. A kindness casts a shadow. One thing we do is stare at seas. My blue jeans are so big. Sorry about my overflowing trash. I get a letter back. From this bush I call my name. We are in a cave. We are at the end. All right. Any of those you want to unravel? I look at the mountains for crying. I look at the mountains for crying. They're so shiny and clean. Words are flowing down into the valley. They're in the order of Clan of the Cave Bear. That's when I wrote that when I was reading that book, or the first half anyway. It's a long one. What's that?
Is that my uncle?
There's my uncle. There's my uncle. There's my aunt. I look like them, but I'm not. I look made from the same ham. The walls are on wheels. The lights have a sugary cast. I'm allergic to funnel-shaped foods. My throat's a funnel. I could die every midnight, cut my finger in the world. They're pretty similarly to the table of contents. I don't know if they make any more sense as a poem. Yeah.
How about outside the burning car?
Outside of the burning, it feels good outside of the burning car. It feels good outside of the burning car. Things look newly like a taco. Even the flowers bloom. One thing we do is stare at seas. One thing we do is stare at seas. We see what washes up, just bars of soap. We go home, wash up. There's a joke deep inside the world. There's an unbendable silence, like how you look to a tarantula. Do you feel like that's true, John?
I'm thinking my chances are fading.
I'd vote for you. I have no chance to become mayor. No one would vote for me. I have all the wrong answers. My pants have no pockets. I don't know how to read. I can't even hold a paper wad. But I've never called an animal butt face. I'm guilty only I'm guilty only of speaking French to them. The French echoes down a hall like a laugh. It holds us like a flash flood forever. Is that the first time the word butt face has been at this poetry series, Tom? That's a hard one to work into a poem. All right, I will, I'm going to read, if you'll indulge me, a longer poem, and then I'll be done, and I'm happy to talk more, answer questions, and we can have a conversation if you'd like. This one, I wanted to read from this book in part because this poem I haven't really read very often, except for, it's a poem called Haircuts, and I wrote it for my sister. And I only have read it in two cases. It was at Poetry Press Week, and it was a performance where during the reading there was violin. My friend Derek was playing a composition that he wrote specifically for the piece, and then my friend Fergus got all of his hair completely shaved off while these poems were being read. So it was very dramatic and very intense, and it was very emotional for me and moving for me. I read it again when Pulver Mar came out at Bishop's Barber Shop while I paid for everybody's haircuts. So I went to the barber shop. I said, let's do all these hair, I got friends in there, like everybody, I got your haircuts. We filled all the chairs. And Derek again played that same piece with the violin. So we were reading about haircuts and all my memories of haircuts while people were getting their haircut while listening to the violin. But I've never made it through without getting really choked up and emotional. So I was thinking I'm going to try this because I wanted to test to see if what was making me emotional was the violin. So without it, we'll see if I can get through it. Okay. 1. Dad used to take me to Sam, his barber. It was a shop called Sam's. Sam was always in there by himself reading the newspaper, waiting for Dad. This is before you were born. We like to talk about how much things used to cost. The candy in the machine took 1 quarter and it came out too fast. A haircut is the first sacrifice, a handing over of proof of next to nothing. Take it and I'll be brave with ease. My favorite part was Dad's turn in the chair. I watched him become new again, closer to me. Two, we sometimes cry during the first haircut. Maybe it's the scissors, or maybe it's not knowing why we're being asked to give up this part of ourselves that's the most alive. Your hair was so white, it was barely there. A tiny white fog, and then it wasn't there, but then it was curly. Years later, we got little plants for everyone for Christmas because we were broke. They're all dead now, the plants, I mean, except Grandma's. I saw it still on her sill in that photo you sent to me on the phone. It's like a race that doesn't end when we win. 3, I used to talk to Dad as he stretched his legs forever in the living room before jogging. It seemed like he could stretch all day long. If you do the math, maybe whole years were spent just stretching, pivoting his upper body slowly across the plane of his legs. The 3 of us were so ready to love you. I couldn't sleep at night imagining you. I thought you'd look exactly like me, like another me. Same face, same arms, same hair, riding in my backpack. But when you arrived, the last day of 7th grade, you were a girl. You had nothing like the moon for hair. I don't know why. So the answer is no. I thought I love this poem. I thought I could do this. And I can. All right. 4. In a diner in Florida, you had no hair under your ball cap. The server flipped the bill of it and asked what the little guy wanted. You pulled your cap down even further. Can it matter what's really wanted in a swamp? What does the little guy want? She'll have the pancake, Mom finally said. 5. Elle cut my hair once on a hot balcony in Kaohsiung. We were far above everything. The sun was finally sinking down into Monkey Mountain. It was your 24th birthday. I hadn't gotten you anything. I tried to call, but the times were off. I'm sure you were just waking up in Omaha, somewhere near where we both were born. B asked Elle to cut his whole beard off. He looked like a baby in a man's body. His face was a kind of blue fruit I had never seen before. Where was I? Where was I going? This new family, B like a brother with a strange new mouth, L a sister with my dead hair on her sticky neck. After they went back inside, I swept some of our hair off the balcony into the unbreathable air, over all the heads of all the people, over the sleeping market with the decapitated pig hanging next to its own head. My hair went up and never came down. 6. There's a photo I took of you laughing. We were on the back of a patio in Kimberling City. It is a good photo. I took it with the nice camera Mom bought me. In it, you have no hair. You're doubled over, overwhelmed with what's funny. Forgive me. It's a slice of time so tiny you can't even look at it. 7. A haircut is a lot to ask of anyone. I can see that now. Elle also cut mine once in the desert because I asked and I felt broken, because I asked and was broke. B waited his turn across from me with a can of beer. It wasn't the haircut I wanted. It was to have it cut, to be cared for, or the thought of, to sit still when asked to live through the entirety of something. 8. Grandma is always worrying about her hair. How's my hair? She asks in hospice. It's been the same since 1970. She used to seal it in Aquanet. It's never gone anywhere. 9. The terrifying year was my second year of college. Kay showed me Pavements Cut Your Hair. I tried to show you that song, but you didn't get it. My hair is getting thin in the front. I'll probably cut it all off, like how Dad is now. B thinks it will look good like that. I want to move closer. I want to get chickens or a dog. 10. Dad's barber, Sam, died about 20 years ago. Now Dad shaves his own head with clippers he bought from Sam's Club. 11. These are the last two. The second time your hair fell out, you were ready. We spent so much time watching swimmers on television. None of them had hair either. That summer, when you got on the blocks, no swim cap on, everyone knew how real you were. "12. I was never prepared to lose you. I lived far away, a safe distance from the sound of battle. Some nights I couldn't sleep imagining you not at home, though some nights I could sleep. I wonder how you slept, your skull smooth on the pillow." B tells me stories about her sister, who was trapped in time at 9. How heavy can surrendered love feel in our throats? How easy it is to text you a joke, to swap photos on our phones. Today you turned 27. I will cut my hair, the smallest gesture, and think of you. I will think of how it felt to put my whole hand on your bald head, how I can never be prepared for anything like that. All right, thank you. Sorry about that. It feels, so many of those poems, the first section of what I wrote to you are, they feel personal. They're certainly from me, but they're also, they're added. It's so rare that I write about real people. Or I'll write from one step removed from that real person. So that poem is pretty rare for me, which is why that's only the third time I've read it, but maybe I'll try again sometime. Yeah, thank you. Should I?
Yeah, see if there are questions.
Okay, yeah.
Thank you for being here.
Yeah,
Yeah, and for reading.
thank you very much for inviting me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for taking some time to read some poems that you don't read. Yeah. I wanted to ask you about fjords
Mm-hmm.
and just why fjords. And if you could talk a little bit about the concept of that and why you titled the 5 volumes you're writing fjords.
You know, that was such, Fjords as a title was such a quick, unthoughtful choice. I just love the word. And for some reason that word feels magical to me because I've never been to a fjord. It feels like it's on some other planet, the fjords do. Like, that's not true. I have been to fjords. But when I wrote those first poems, I just had the word fjord in a lot of those early poems. And they started feeling like fjords to me. The poems themselves started feeling like fjords. Not real fjords, but just the word. Like the mystery of the word, the strangeness of the word, the sort of sound of the word. In one poem that I had written in Fjords Volume 1, fjords were like little deaths waiting for their moment. And then you would finally, on your last day, when it was time, you would meet that fjord, like they were waiting for you. So these poems felt a lot like they were about, they were very dreamlike, but about each one somehow about a kind of death, like a study in death or a study of thinking about my own death, but in these sort of dreamlike ways. So it just became it's just a word, you know, kind of this sort of dark, cold, but also funny word. So I didn't question it too much. And now in Fjords Volume 2, I think the word maybe only appears 2 or 3 times. In the back of each of them, there's an index of words. So I can just find out. Fjords isn't even listed at all, so maybe it's only in there once. But the idea is that I'll write a volume of Fjords once every 10 years. So Fjords Volume 1 came out in my 30s. I'm in my 40s now. I plan on writing Fjords Volume 3 to come out in my mid-50s. Fjords Volume 4 in my mid-60s, and if I'm lucky, Fjords Volume 7, or Fjords Volume 5 in my 70s. And then think of it as one collection. And what I love about that is it's tracking not only my relationship to death, but it's also tracking my relationship to prose poems. Each one of them, like, I can kind of see how my approach to the prose poem has changed in the last 10 years too, when they have the same framework. So as a collective, as a whole collected book, hopefully it'll be kind of fun to be able to see how my prose poem has changed from my 30s to my 70s. Yeah, thanks for asking. Yeah.
Just a comment first. Being Fang was so satisfying. The ending, I was like, please, just.
You're right.
And you did it. You
It's like a
delivered
good
it.
French Fang.
It was so delightful.
Thank you.
And it brought me a great amount of joy that I was not expecting today. So.
Oh, thank you so much. Well, that brings me joy.
Yeah, I mean, it's, so your love of like words, just in general, like, I just like that word, so I use it, is chef's kiss. So thank you for that inspiration and that joy. I'm interested in understanding your relationship to the editing process, especially when it comes to writing things that are closer to you. So in your piece, for example, are you someone in general who's like, I've been writing this for a long time, and I revisit, as you revisit your grief in those moments? Or do you know when it's done and then you're done, and that's the moment?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't, and I'll just repeat it just in case if the question's about my editing process, if I know when a poem's done or not. And for me, there isn't too much of an editing process. Writing and editing feel to me like all one act, I guess. I mean, of course they are, but editing is certainly creative, and it happens in the moment that I'm composing. So sometimes a lot of these poems, like Remembering a Poem, for example, didn't have any editing process at all. Like I literally wrote this in 2 minutes or 3 minutes, and then trust that it's okay. You know, like I'm never in one. I was once a teacher, and I still am a teacher. Currently, don't have a class, but I know that a lot of my students spend years on a single poem, and I think part of it is because they're trying to write the greatest poem of all time. They're trying to write their greatest poem, and it's really important to them. And for me, I never think about it as I'm trying to write the best poem ever. I'm just trying to write a poem, and then know that I'm going to write another one after that the next day or in the next 5 minutes or something. Because I think also as a novelist, which is the exact opposite feeling, which is just painful and work. And but when I'm done with that, editing for years, that feeling is like so overwhelmingly joyful. It's like I've never been so proud of myself. Like, wow, look at what I did, that feeling. With a poem, I get to feel a small version of that, same feeling, but like maybe turned down to 1 or 2. But I get to have that in a few minutes sometimes, or an hour, or maybe a week or 2 if I will return to it. But it's it all happens kind of in one session for me. And I think because I try not to think about it too much. I try not to overthink it. Sometimes it's just good. It's good. It's good enough. It's funny. And usually I'll know when it's done when something surprises me. So a lot of times that might be a last line that I can stick on there and go, that's it. Now it did something to me. I'm shocked by it, or I'm surprised by it. Which is hard to do. It's like trying to surprise yourself in the mirror. But if you can learn how to surprise yourself in a mirror, then you know when a poem's done. Yeah. Yeah, for me. Thanks. What's that? Oh yeah, Dream Delivery Service, Matthias Svalina, Svalina. Dream Delivery Service, he sends, types out dreams individually for people when they subscribe, and will send them to you every day. So you get something in the mail every day, which is a real treat. Yeah. So one thing I'll do is, because I don't love writing just from scratch, I love writing. For me is always a conversation, a collaboration. So I always have books open in front of me. A lot of times photography books I'll have open in front of me just to look at objects. I love nouns and objects, and a lot of my poems are lead with nouns instead of ideas or verbs, like just what are the nouns I can string together. So a lot of times it's just visual But with him, it's always in response to something. So yeah, I took each of his lines that he wrote in a dream and then said, without reading anymore, I said, okay, what would be the next sentence if I were to write this dream, if I were to think of what's next? And I'll write that sentence. So, like, yeah, I'm on an island back in time. Maybe his sentence was like, or you know, like something about a time machine. And then I'm on an island back in time. But then I remove his sentence, and then that's my first line. And then I read his next sentence and respond to it. And by doing that, all in the same dream, they kind of start to, they feel kind of incoherent. They don't quite connect with each other, but they kind of do. Like I'll keep the same pronoun in them, or maybe bring an image through to it, just so they can barely hold together. But I love that exercise. I just love poetry as a puzzle, as a game. You know, what games can I invent for myself and then play them? Yeah.
Some days words come out just constantly.
Yeah, and there's.
So how do you, I use time sometimes.
Oh yeah.
How do you do it?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it feels like a game to me, and sometimes it can feel almost, first thought can sometimes feel pretty silly, but then, or not good or whatever, but sometimes in a certain context, that not good line is so amazing. Like a really dull, like cliche line, if you set it up right, can just trust it and set it up right, and it can really zing, you know. I've done like set time limits sometimes, but not very often, but that's kind of fun too. And I've done that for students, like, all right, because that really gets you out of the overthinking. It's like, you got 3 minutes to write a great little poem. And sometimes that's one of your greatest poems, because you're just like, wow, I had to think. And then maybe a day later or the next minute you realize, oh, if I just put this little surprise in here, or sometimes flip through one of these books and just find the word plant or the word finger and put that in there, I'm like, oh, then the poem just pops. It's just like that little 3-line poem is going to be mine forever, you know? Yeah. I mean, yeah.
Could you speak a bit to how your relationship to the prose poem has changed?
Well, I'm just learning that through Fjords. They've always been pretty grounded in James Tate language. Like, they're really inspired by dialogue and narrative, and one thing, and kind of colloquialisms. You know, like hell, I love everybody. That's, you know, at the end of one of his poems. But I think so that seems to have carried through, at least for the last 20 years. They're getting a little more. They're getting a little further away from that too. My prose poems now feel, at least some of them, I'd say half of the ones in Fjords Volume 2, feel a little more esoteric and a little more abstract and a little more lyric, probably. Whereas in Fjords Volume 1, they were a little more simple narratives that would kind of end with some sort of aha moment or punchline or anti-punchline. And now they still do that, but I'm just a little more interested in sound than I was before, and creating sentences that are maybe a little bit more lyric, or just are interested in the way sounds touch each other and how the words touch each other more than the narrative itself. So less jokes maybe is the easiest way to, but there's still jokes in there, just fewer. A lot of my prose poems have a lot in common with a joke. You know, how a joke would work, how you get set up and the floor drops out from under you, or jokes are just all, like the success of a joke is, a narrative joke is just all about surprise. and that's really no different than what I'm trying to do with the prose poem. Yeah?
When did you start writing poetry, and was there a seminal event that kicked it off?
I started writing poems pretty late. I mean, when I talk to my poetry friends, they say, oh, I've been writing since I was 4 or when I was a teenager. When I took my first poetry class at the age of 21, I couldn't have named, I remember the first assignment was just name who are the poets you like. And I was like, I don't know I literally don't know any poets. I was 21 years old. I'd never been introduced to the idea of a poem. And I took that class because, you know, the friends I wanted to hang out with, the coolest people in school were going to poetry class. So I just wanted to hang out with them. So from there, I was given the task of an imitation poem, which I still use that exercise a lot. Find a poem that I really love and write that, mimic that poem. Sometimes it's like the exact same grammatical structure or whatever I want to do and just mimic that. And so I did that with Russell Edson's The Fall, which is still one of, so first poem, oh, he gave us a packet, the teacher did, and he said, imitate one of these 10 poems, and I picked Russell Edson's The Fall. I thought this will be the easiest one to imitate. It's because it's the shortest. And that poem is still one of the most important poems to me. I have some of it tattooed on me. But when I came back the next week with my imitation poem about a talking pig, first poem I'd ever written, the guy, his name is Paul Gianoli, he said, he read it to the class. He said, look at this poem. This is a great imitation poem. And he read my poem to the class. And I remember feeling like that, I felt so proud, like more than like getting an A in journalism class or whatever. There's something about when somebody likes your poem, I just was like, I want that feeling every day. And today I'm here reading poems and you guys seem interested. And so it's that same feeling. It's like, wow, look at me. I did a good thing. I wrote a poem and you guys like it. So that I just got hooked the second he said, this is a great poem. I thought, I want to do this forever. And then I started seeing the world differently. I was like, I want to write a second poem. So I'd go out into the world and look at the tree and have a conversation. And everything started filtering into a poem from that point. I want to put that tree in the poem. I want to put what you said in a poem. And I still do that, you know, with a little notebook and think that I'm constantly making poems now. Because of Mr. Gianoli.
Any more questions? One more?
Yep, one more.
Who are you reading, and maybe who would you keep coming back to?
You know, right now I'm reading a lot of novels, poems. I'm in with my friend John and a few other really close friends. I'm in a group that we call Poetry Church, and we meet once a month on Sunday mornings. And we just read Charles Simich's book most recently. So most of my poetry reading is through just wanting to have conversations with friends. So most recently, Charles Simich's book, which is, or meaning his selected. But I always come back to Mary Ruefle. She's probably hands down my favorite living writer, living poet, Mary Ruefle, Ruefle. And I always come back to Anne Carson's Short Talks. That book is one of the best books of poems I've ever read. It's really easy to read. It's prose poems, really strange and really lyric. Maybe she's influenced Fjord Volume 2 if it's getting more lyric. But that book I've read, I've had, it's kind of like Maggie Nelson's Bluets. Everybody has like 4 copies of it and they're all destroyed. And for me, it's Anne Carson's Short Talks from this little press called Brick Books. And it was something that I'm on like my third copy of it now. And James Tate, Russell Edson, Graham Faust, Wong May, Heather Crystal, lots of good poets that I read.
You mentioned Charles Simic, who recently passed away. What is it about his work that speaks to you?
Well, we just had that conversation. I think he kind of looks at the world in a pretty, he manages to write poems that are pretty surreal and playful while grounded in tragedy and war. And it's something that reading his poems I find to be pretty magical, how you can pull off this sad, funny tone of like talking about very real things, about this one particular image of like all the soldiers have gone, but who's going to televise the part where we're just standing around after the planes have left and are starving. And nobody talks about that part. And he talks about that part in a poem and still manages to do it in this way that is balanced through surrealism and absurdity and funniness. And I admire that. I think there's several people who can do that really well, about writing from reality and surreality, writing comedy and seriousness all at the same time. And that's to get an audience to both want to go, I'm really deeply affected by that line, and the person next to them laughs. If you can do that, and he can, then I think that emotional complexity is something to really admire.
So do you have a poem you'd like to end with?
I didn't think about that. I don't know, do you?
What about the first poem you ever wrote?
Well, I don't have access to that. I don't have access to that one. I wish, that'd be so cool if I had that memorized. I could summarize it. I'll do the first, I'll just do this. This is the oldest poem probably I have in front of me, if that's what you're interested in. This is written in 1998, and it's the first poem in The Man Suit, which is my first book, which came out in 2007, and was edited for probably 10 years. So that's an exception. This book was way more edited than I do now, because I was trying to write the best poems I've ever written. The Monster Hour. On the Monster Hour, there was this monster that used to come out and try to kill everybody in the audience. No one expected it, not even the producers, who were told by the monster he would play a few blues tunes on the piano. The monster apologized after each show and asked for another chance. I'm planning on telling a few jokes this time, he would say. But time after time, he'd break his word and try to kill everybody. The producers finally replaced him with a gorilla dressed in people clothes that came out and played a Wurlitzer, but they never changed the name of the show. It was always the Monster Hour. I don't think anybody understood then what a monster really was. All right, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Glad you were here. Just let you know, next month, Brittany Corrigan is going to be here. She's our reader in April, second Wednesday of April, 6 o'clock here at the library. So thank you all for being here. Thank you all, for those of you that are watching on the live stream, thank you for logging in. I want to ask everybody, and when we give Zachary another hand, I want you to imagine that the people that are watching on live stream, they're also applauding too. Well done. Let's give him. So thank you for being here. Good night.